Live from North Florida, it's Saturday night. It's actually Pontificating with Pete on Revolutionary Change. Good evening, guys. Hope you're all doing well. It's great to see you all. Looks like we got a little bit of a bigger crowd than we did on Thursday. The one thing that Jen and I had discussed before going live tonight, and I had mentioned that I saw some of the commentary right before we got started that people were acknowledging that, oh, I got the reminder for this evening. Hey, I got the reminder. And on Thursday, pretty much nobody got the reminder. And it reminded me of why we constantly have to be cognizant of every word we use, title we use, anything that is, let's just say, against the corporate state in any way, shape, or form, especially with what's going on right now in Minneapolis, among other places. If we have any inkling or there's any indication that what we're going to talk about is going against the corporate narrative, they're going to shut us down or suppress us as much as they can. So that's number one. Number two, it turns out, as I had briefly mentioned in the last show, the second copyright strike, which we got a few days ago, which if you guys have been paying attention to our clips over the past handful of days, they have been dreadfully in the toilet bowl with the exception of one or two. And the reason being is that when you get a copyright strike, you also get sent down, the ladder, if you will, in terms of your shadow ban. And so now it's even greater. And it turns out that the person who put this second strike on our channel, turns out that they really are just trying to bribe us for money. Because when I had instructed our producer to inquire with them what it would take for us to have the strike removed, their response was, pay us 500 euros, or we can talk about a partnership working together. So then I suggested to him, well, why don't you try to negotiate with them? See what happens when you make a suggestion of, well, what about less? Something along those lines. So they come back with 260 euros. Why don't you pay that instead? So it's clear that it's extortion. And when I brought this up to Jen, she said, yeah, we're not paying that. I don't care what it is. Even if they reduced it to 100 euros, it's the principle of not giving in, because if you do, then it's going to be an indication that, oh, we can just copyright strike the shit out of this channel and just get paid left and right. So defiance is probably the best strategy, even though, as I mentioned previously, and I will mention throughout the course of the evening, we do have a backup channel. It's called Pontificating with Pete. If for whatever reason we receive our third copyright strike in the next, I believe, 18 or 19 days, this is where you're going to want to go. So make sure, if you're not currently subscribed, Revolutionary Change will continue in earnest on that channel. If for whatever reason, over the next 3 weeks, we get a third copyright strike, which, considering the road that we're going down right now, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if that ends up happening. And as you could probably imagine, we've got a lot in store for you this evening. And here is the link as our trusty mod puts forward. Make sure that you smash that like button. Make sure that you share the stream. Make sure that you are subscribed. And just so everybody knows, especially those that are new, Saturday night is my solo show, Pontificating with Pete. 3 shows a week is too much for Jen. 2 shows is just right. Plus, Jen is also getting settled in North Georgia and is watching behind the scenes and helping out production-wise. So anything and everything that we could do to help facilitate the message, grow the channel, but more importantly, we want to make sure that the stories that need to get out there, that the messages that need to get out there about everything that's going on right now, do not lose sight of what's going on. In particular, what happened in Minneapolis. That's just one of a greater story here, and we're going to cover that in earnest in just a moment. But David, I don't know if I'm planning that at this point. In the grand scheme of things, yes, I really would still like to get rid of her, but we'll see what redistricting in Florida looks like. Ultimately, that might end up being the ticket regarding how we get rid of DWS. That's just one of many. What I will say, and this goes for anybody who's here, I'm deeply disappointed in a lot of people when it comes to what did happen to Renee Good. And I said this to Jen earlier, politically speaking, I would probably have or would have had very significant disagreements with somebody like Renee Good. And let's take it a step further and say, what if she was blocking the path of the ICE agents? All I know is the following. Number one, ICE is trained by the IDF. So shooting to kill and not asking questions or having any empathy is no surprise. And number two, this total capitulation to law enforcement by a portion of conservative America is very weird. I'm not anti-cop. I'm not anti-military. I'm anti-rogue cop, anti-military industrial complex. But I'll tell you, when I was in Ireland, you had cops on the road. Yeah, they were walking the beat. They were doing their thing. But they don't harass anybody, and they're not carrying guns. They have them in their squad cars, I'm sure. But in terms of walking on the beat, no. In this country, there is no question. Yeah, F the law. Yeehaw, F the law. Well, yeah, but that's it. They're all playing cowboy. And it turns out that this guy, Jonathan Ross, who should come as no surprise, is a war veteran. He also has worked in the Department of Homeland Security for many years, did a lot of clandestine operations over the years. So there probably is a sense of invincibility that this man feels. And if you just watch how the whole thing went down, it's just pretty obvious whether you, again, support cops or not, and whether or not you think that this woman was in the wrong or that she has he, she, her pronouns. Here's what I can tell you, point blank, period. The idea that you think that shooting to kill in that situation was warranted, and let's take it a step further. Let's say she was trying to hit him with the car. Do you know how much space you need in order to accelerate to a point in which that man's life would be in danger or even in danger of getting really hurt? And when you consider where he was standing, again, you can only accelerate a few miles an hour in a standstill spot. But people want to make it out like, oh, she was going to run him over and kill him. Yes, this woman with a dog in the car and a 6-year-old child was going to do that. I mean, at some point, there just is no excuse. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're playing on. You're not winning friends. You're only making enemies. And if this is strictly for political points, shame on every last one of you. And I'm pro Second Amendment. And I am pro law and order where it's warranted. But it's the same thing with immigration. It's the same thing with ICE. It's the same issue I keep telling everybody, and it doesn't seem to take as so I have to keep repeating it. We live in a country today that is going down by the head because multinational corporations have completely taken it over. They're driving us into a complete death spiral. We can't afford anything because they pay nothing into the system. And as soon as that is a realization, they just move it into another country. Look at what George Soros did to the United Kingdom. They're doing it here, and they'll do it everywhere. Why? Because oligarchs run the world, and oligarchs should not exist. And by that measure, when you have an open border policy, as we had in the last administration, why is that? Because it's hand in glove. You have, on the one hand, those with the multinational corporations that would pay slave wage if they could get away with it. And frankly, that's really what it is. It's slave wage. And on the other hand, you have desperate people who are willing to come into this country for pennies on the dollar because the living conditions in which they're in is probably equivalent to the prison system you see in places like El Salvador. So the solutions are pretty simple. Or actually, there's one solution. And we've been repeating it constantly. And that, of course, is revolution. The R word. That's it. There is no other way. And as much as I don't want it to be that way, you have to come to the realization that the people that are pulling the levers of power today, the Stephen Millers of the world, the Marco Rubios of the world, the Donald Trumps of the world, you think they're going to give it up? No, they're not. And so while we get distracted by this civilian who was murdered by a cowboy who now is on the run, apparently he's in hiding, and they're going to protect him. we're still distracted from the bigger issues here. And we're going to get to that. With that being said, if anybody commented on this event that I thought really honed in on the problems that exist and what needs to be done to a degree, Jesse the Body Ventura, who has been a guest on the Revolutionary Change podcast a time or two before, and hopefully we'll get him back on the channel soon enough. He really did a great job. Here he is.
Did it make you feel better to have that conversation, or what would you say?
No, I'm just saying, as a graduate of Roosevelt High School and as the former governor of Minnesota, I'm so proud of Roosevelt High School and how they stood up for what is supposed to be America and freedom. And freedom is not arresting people without warrants. We have a system here. It's called a Constitution. And we have a party, the Republicans, who don't seem to want to abide by the Constitution. January 6th is a prime example of that. And now they're all free and they're in charge. You know what? Maybe it's time for Jesse. I only did one term. I'm owed a second.
Hey, you know, I thought that it might make sense at this point, considering everything that we have going on, that perhaps Jesse might even be more suited at this stage to run for president. But I also understand at his advanced age and considering all the miles on his body, that that's probably not something that's in the cards, even though I think having him on the national stage would actually be perfect timing right now. But with Tim Walz officially stepping down and not seeking another term as governor, the fact that he is even toying with the idea of running for governor of Minnesota again, then I say we have to set up a draft Jesse for governor of Minnesota. That's the problem. But in the state of Minnesota, where he has been a mayor and a governor and is quite revered amongst his people, including his push, who he played a substantial outsized role even in the legalization of cannabis. I would say right now that this is as good a time as any to make a move. It would certainly create a lot of headlines, and he would have a lot of cannon fodder, not just to go after Trump, but to just have this support network that would clearly rise up behind him. And I do think that if anybody understands how to use the media to the fullest extent of their advantage, it's definitely Jesse. And I mean, I'm supporting him already. You just say when. Just say when. You and Tyrell, just let us know. And you know you're always welcome to come on our channel, promote whatever you like. And in this case, if you are planning to run for governor again, hey, you would be owed a second term. And I think he could win. I do. Especially right now.
Mr. Ventura, can you tell us, remind us, you went to school here?
I went to school here. I'm a 1969 graduate of Minneapolis Roosevelt. I'm proud of them for what they did. They made me proud as an alumni. Go Teddies.
What are your thoughts? I know we're jumping in, probably doubling up on some of his questions, but what are some of your thoughts about what unfolded yesterday? And then after that, what you saw.
Well, I've told you already. We're a country of the Constitution. We have leadership now that has destroyed the Constitution. They don't follow it. They could care less about it. Am I right or wrong? I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I view after January 6th, the Republican Party is a domestic enemy to our Constitution. I can't get any bolder than that, can I?
The problem with that statement is just painting a broad brush that it's the GOP is the problem. No, the whole system is the problem. And there is a distinction in terms of the split that's happening right now in conservative America, as well as what's happening in liberal America. So that part of the broad brush, I don't agree with. You have to call a spade a spade. I mean, we just had Clint Russell on the channel, and he agrees with us in terms of what went down, and so do a lot of other people. This capitulation to law enforcement, to the military-industrial complex, again, it's all about what suits, I guess, who's paying. And yes, Jesse does support Palestine. So he's definitely on the right track on most issues. Doesn't mean he's perfect, but how could you not love the guy? I know I do.
And you obviously saw the video that the student shot outside here, and that obviously elicited a lot of emotions for you. Just watching
What do you mean
that,
the student shot?
there were some
outside?
students that shot the video of the chaos here yesterday. It was
No, I
nice.
didn't even
Oh,
see
you didn't
it.
see it? Okay, I thought
I
you
didn't
did.
see it.
Okay, okay.
The only thing I've seen is the murder.
So talk about, you were a student here. When did you graduate?
1969.
Have you been back here? Talk about that. Is this like the first time back?
No. Came back to homecoming 2 years ago. No. I'm a proud graduate. I held 3 school records in swimming, 2 District 17 records. Our football team was undefeated. We won. Back then there were no playoffs. We played St. Paul Central for the Twin City Championship and defeated them, I think it was 21-6. And we did that at the old brick house, if you remember that, the old University of Minnesota. That's where they used to play the Twin City Championship game. There weren't playoffs then.
Dave Winfield was on that Central team, wasn't he?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. We beat Dave Winfield and Central.
Just
Okay.
to be abundantly clear about what you're doing, what you wanted to do at the school here today.
I just came here today to show my support as a graduate of Roosevelt and tell them how proud I was of what they did of keeping ICE off of this campus. This is a place of learning, and you learn things like the Constitution. You learn about warrants. You learn about things of that nature. And what we're getting right now is violating all that, what kids are being taught. You want to know something? I'll give you a quote. We're a third world country now. You want to know why? I'm an expert. I've been to them. I spent 17 months in Southeast Asia while the draft dodger was playing golf, right? You know how I know we're a third world country? Because in third world countries, they have the military doing their police work in the cities when you walk around. I was in the Philippines the day Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law and went under dictatorship. We went from nobody to a guy with a machine gun on every corner. That's what happens in a dictatorship. In comes the military. That's what's happening here. And people better wake up to it. You want to read something? Then read your history of Germany and start comparing the tactics of what happened in 1930s Germany to what's happening here.
He's absolutely correct that putting the National Guard in all of these cities and superseding the will of law enforcement at the local level is also causing a huge problem. And make no mistake, when it comes to ICE, it's a lot different than the sheriff's office, local police. There really is something to be said for this sort of rogue organization, if you will. And I've said, if you're not going to deal with the actual fundamental problem with illegal immigration in the United States, which again is used as a weapon against citizenry. We do not have labor laws in this country anymore, among many others that don't exist. But in terms of living in a country where we actually protect our workers, where we have a living wage, where we have universal health care, those things don't exist. And so what ends up happening? The second labor decides to get its sea legs and start fighting back, they open up the floodgates at the border, bring in people who will work for pennies on the dollar and screw labor and everyone at the same time. The powers that be do not fear the people. But Thomas Jefferson always pointed out, or excuse me, Ben Franklin always pointed out, that if you have a citizenry that fears the government, you have tyranny, which is what we have now. If you have a government or a ruling class that fears its citizens, then you have liberty. Right now, the powers that be do not fear us at all. Have you seen the reaction from some of the ICE agents in the recent videos that have been popping up over the past day or two? Have you not learned your lesson from what happened the other day? We're going to shoot you dead next. That's what's happening. And whenever I see anybody get on their hands and knees and blow an ICE agent, literally and figuratively, holy fucking shit. This is insane. It's one thing to support law enforcement. It's another thing entirely to think that they're ones worth celebrating. ICE is worth celebrating. They don't believe in anything. In fact, a lot of these guys are, weekend warrior paintball shooters. They're finally having a taste of what it's like to have real power and authority against people that can't fight back. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, it's like the IOF with the Palestinians in Gaza. It's the same thing. Hence why they're trained by the same people. So Jesse the Body Ventura knows a thing or two about what a third world country looks like, and I am inclined to agree with him.
Read history. You learn from history. And this is nothing new. This is all repeated. This is a game plan, it looks like to me, of what's going on here. How dare Minnesota, we'll take care of ourselves. We don't need federal troops coming in here without warrants.
Some people have said this undermines local law enforcement.
It undermines the entire Constitution. The military cannot be turned loose unless it's a national emergency. They're going to tell me this is a national emergency?
Message for Trump or message for Governor Walz?
Who was that? You mean the draft-dodging coward? I don't call him by name. He's the draft-dodging coward who, when it was his time to serve his country, he did what all rich white boys did. I wasn't a rich white boy. I grew up in South Minneapolis. Most of me and all my friends are Vietnam veterans. We had to go. But the rich white boys never had to go, did they?
This leads to a very important part of this conversation, which is going to lead into our next story. You have to remember that more than anything else, and I will repeat this as long as I have a channel, this is a class war, nothing more. That's all it's ever been. That's all it ever will be. And when you have people like Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, the Donald, among many others, that are itching for war, including the billionaire Zionist Jewish oligarchs, what do they all have in common? As Raise the Wolf said, fortunate son. Creedence Clearwater Revival understood it, and so do a lot of other people. This is a rich man's game that a poor man pays for. And now that things are starting to ratchet up pretty substantially when it comes to Iran, and we're going to get to Lil Ben Shapiro later in the show, their children will never fight in these wars. They will never be directly affected by the decisions that are made at the highest levels of government. Again, the big difference between the Democrats and Republicans is the Democrats are nicer. That's it. They do the same thing. Now it's just a total free-for-all. Like no one cares anymore. That's where we're at. So Jesse nailed it right on the head once again.
And he didn't have to go, did he? And yet he's going to tell me what courage is?
Are you supporting Governor Walz and Mayor Frey the way they've been outspoken towards?
Absolutely. Good for them and good for these people that stood up. They're teaching their students something, that we are a country, that we have to be a country of law and a country of the Constitution. They're all forgetting about the Constitution of the United States of America. We don't even have it anymore. After January 6th, are you kidding me? And then
we didn't have a constitution after the Patriot Act was passed following 9/11. And now that we all know 9/11 was a job, you understand why I can't abide by everything that Jesse says. So I just don't. He's right about a lot of stuff, but not that. Constitution was lost a long time ago.
they all get turned loose and now they're in charge. I gave up on this country when this guy got, I haven't even watched the news since last November. I stumbled onto this, and now look what you've done to me.
Well, thank you for stopping. We appreciate it.
Here I was leading a nice, quiet life, and now you've injected me back in here, and probably going to make me the governor of Minnesota again.
And you seem fired up and motivated.
Because somebody needs to clean up what the Democrats and Republicans constantly wreck. And you notice I lump them together. You know, I should use my old name for them, the Democrips and the Republicans, which my apologies to the Crips and Bloods for using their name in that way.
Now that is a man of the people. I have not read that book, but I have been advised to read that book. I don't think he wants to run, but I think he feels an obligation at this point. And when he's been on our channel before, that's one of the things that he really emphasized quite a bit. This need to serve his fellow man, woman, and child. And that's what he's always done. And one of the things that I had brought up, which I would bring up with him if and when he comes back on the channel, is that shortly after Hulk Hogan had passed away, there was a clip that we had played on the channel that showed Hogan admitting that he had sabotaged Jesse Ventura's efforts to unionize wrestlers in the WWF and now WWE. Point being is that if a line of work really needs unionization, I would think something like wrestling, professional wrestling, would be necessary. And Jesse was always ahead of the curve, and this attempt at unionization within the WWF was back in 1987. And the fact that Hogan had sabotaged it for Vinnie Mac says it all. And the fact that the body was on the side of the workers, as he was then, as he is now. 40 years later, he has the track record and then some. So if he chooses to run for governor again, which we hope he will, I think he'll have an excellent chance, especially in this moment where the country is desperately seeking change. And when I think about the change that I want to see in this country, the change that I think we all desperately want to see and need to see, I don't pay any attention or any mind, for the most part, with rare exception, to a lot of the commentary that is coming from people that supposedly declare themselves to be on the left in politics. Because this issue seems to be, when it comes to ICE, it's very similar to immigration. It's in the same context, so it's the same thing. So you have immigration, you have Second Amendment, you have abortion, women's reproductive health. There's probably a few others sprinkled in. I mean, Israel would have been one a while ago, but not anymore. That's become very much a unifying issue for most people, which is a great thing. However, when it comes to this primary issue here, more than any other that we're seeing in this moment, it's like people forget that over the course of the Biden administration, there were cop cities popping up all over the country. And everyone was quiet then because the liberal president was doing it. Now you have the conservative president who's executing those efforts, and now they're up in arms. And when you see the actions that took place in Minneapolis, you realize that there are a lot of people who freely accept an authoritarian or even a totalitarian state. Everyone wonders, how do we get here? How does this become the norm? How do people just capitulate to this type of a system? Well, because unfortunately, Ben Franklin was correct many, many years ago. Those that will give up security for liberty deserve neither. And there are way too many comfortable Americans today that will give up liberty for security. That's how they perceive it. And they also don't question how broken this economic and political system is because it hasn't completely engulfed them yet. I cannot for the life of me understand just how selfish and self-centered our culture really is. It's beyond brazen. Now, I'm going to read to you a statement that was made I'm not going to tell you who wrote it until afterwards. But I will tell you that the person who did write it is a conservative. And here's what this person had to say. The Minnesota shooting, Venezuela, Gaza, it's all connected. A woman got shot in the face. Yes. Yesterday's Minnesota ICE shooting, the video is violent, bloody, and tough to watch. Please click only if you think it can, and if you can handle it. Is providing plenty of material for conservatives to score political points. The victim shouldn't have blocked the road with her car. Hundreds of hysterical protesters launched into their typical routines last night, and liberal leaders like Jacob Frey, who immediately declared it's time for ICE to get the F out of Minneapolis, are predictably behaving like children. That's all true, but it should be secondary to the tragedy of Renee Nicole Good losing her life. The 37-year-old was an American citizen and reportedly the mother of a kindergarten-aged child. Did we disagree with her viewpoints on immigration? Probably. But that shouldn't matter. Her death is a tragedy, regardless of her partisan affiliations, ideological beliefs, or who pulled the trigger. A woman got shot in the face. Colin? Colin? How come so few conservatives are viewing this story through a human lens? And why, when something similar like the killing of Charlie Kirk happens on the other side, did on the left celebrate because they thought his political positions were wrong? We have a guess. Violence around the world is desensitizing Americans to violence at home. Think about what just happened in Venezuela. Donald Trump's backers are celebrating Nicolas Maduro's abduction as a victory for justice, freedom, and American prosperity, while his opponents fear it was a manufactured act of nation-building globalism detrimental to our national interests. This piece's purpose is not to weigh in on the debate, but it's worth acknowledging what neither side seems bothered to mention: the attack's death toll. According to U.S. officials, the operation ended 75 lives. Venezuela says the number is even higher. Did you know that? Is anyone in Washington or the media talking about it? It doesn't matter how anti-Maduro you are. The deaths of the human beings in his country, even if they were his paid protesters, or paid protectors, were tragic. Just like Good's killing should be seen as a horror show, even from a right-wing perspective. Those people lost their futures. Then, of course, there's Gaza. Americans have grown so accustomed to tales of the IDF's US-backed barbarities that we've reached a state of numbness. The fact that Israel has reportedly slaughtered over 400 Palestinians since agreeing to its ceasefire doesn't even register as news. Our tax dollars continues to fund the Israelis' mass killings, making the shooting of just one little old woman in Minnesota seem entirely inconspicuous, but it isn't. And I will also say, it's been a lot more than 400 people that were slaughtered in Gaza since the ceasefire. If the U.S. were in a better place, everyone, regardless of their politics, would pause when something like the Minneapolis, you moved too fast. The same goes for Russia. We get it. Permanent Washington thinks Putin is a very bad man, but that doesn't mean we should cheerlead as untold numbers of his citizens get their limbs blown off in frozen European battlefields. Violence is grotesque, and it is always grotesque, even if you earnestly believe that certain displays of it advance a greater good. Two things can be true at once. If the U.S. were in a better place, everyone, regardless of their politics, would pause when something like the Minneapolis shooting happens and at least recognize the human tragedy. But that doesn't happen because compared to the countless overseas killings our government routinely brings about, Good's death doesn't seem like such a big deal. She's just another headline. How can this situation improve? Americans must stop normalizing bloodshed. That means pulling the plug on funding ethnic cleansing, viewing war as the last option rather than the first, and please, for the love of God, no more Lindsey Graham frothing over the titillating excitement of killing people. A step back and a deep breath would make our country and world a more humane place. This is the person who wrote that piece.
Announced that he is hiking the Pentagon budget from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. Just announced that. Why? Well, it's hard to know without asking him. He'll explain. But big picture, obviously, that's the kind of budget that a country that anticipates a global or regional war has for its military. There's no.
So for those of you who are not up to snuff in why I've said from the beginning of this stream that the shooting in Minneapolis is a distraction from much bigger things happening right now, this is one of them. Did you know that Trump is attempting to push the next military budget from $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion? What do you think that's for? You think that these contractors need to get paid more money because the money's shooting out of their ears as we speak? Or is it entirely possible that we're being preempted for war with Iran, or maybe China, or maybe more money for Gaza for Israel to complete its ethnic cleanse and mass murder? Maybe they need more money for Ukraine. But all I know is that the powers that be have gotten so drunk with power that they now like rubbing it in our face. Literally, rubbing it in our face. Telling us, here, would you like another? And if you don't, too fucking bad, because you're not going to do anything about it. Think about that number. Pretty nuts. 1.5 trillion with a T, and we're totally going to get it because people can't stay focused. But this is why, despite what some people feel about Tucker showing up at Trump's meeting the other day and giving a little slow clap to him, no, sometimes you need people like that in the room. And even if he's full of shit, even if Mr. Fishback, who's running for governor of Florida, is full of shit, you know what I know for a fact? If people with platforms are saying what needs to be said, then eventually the populace is going to catch on and they're going to go with it, even if the people that are running are not going to as well. I don't trust Tucker like I don't trust anybody, but I can respect him and appreciate what he's saying. And what Tucker has been saying and will continue to say, I can appreciate. And you can think he's an op, you can think whatever you want. I think he's intelligence. His father was intelligence. But clearly, something has happened to him over the past several years where he feels the need to be on the side of the populace. He is being a class traitor in so many respects. And if nothing else, we can tip our hat to that.
No other reason to do that. That's not a peacekeeping budget. That's a war budget, a big war budget. So I think it's fair to expect, and all the signs suggest, that we're going to have a big war soon. A big war soon. I think everyone expects that to happen. Hope it doesn't happen, but obviously we're moving in that direction, toward a world war. Sorry. So how do you position yourself for that? Well, you look at a map and you ask the most basic questions. What areas do I want to control? Where are the trade routes? Who's got the resources? Who do I share a language with? Who do I share a common history with? Who do I share a civilization with? And you proceed on that basis, and you try and shore up your team, the allies, against the other team, the Axis or whatever. But you think soberly about how the world is going to cleave once this begins. And if you were to do that for about, 25 or 30 seconds, you would arrive at the most obvious conclusion of all, which is the United States has to have a relationship with Russia in order to survive anything like that. And the reason is really simple: scale and resources. Russia is the largest country in the world. It has the most resources in the world. That means energy, oil and gas. It means all kinds of minerals. It means gold. And in a world where the US dollar is probably not going to be as powerful as it once was, already declining in value, massive incentive for other countries to get off the dollar to trade in energy in other currencies. You need to think about gold. And people are thinking about gold. And by the way, if you are wondering whether volatility is coming up, look at silver prices, look at gold prices over the last year. Investors understand this is a new time. You need to be aligned with Russia. And the number one thing you can't do, Donald Trump has said this many times over the years, is allow Russia and China to become a bloc, because if you do, then you are facing off against the majority of the world's population, the biggest population bloc in the world, the biggest land mass in the world, and the biggest economy in the world.
When Trump won his first term, and he did win in 2016, they could not accept that he won, and they had to come up with an excuse. So what did they do? They saber-rattled Russia to such a degree for so long that over the course of the past decade, an organization known as BRICS started taking shape. And when we have always discussed the three most powerful nations on earth, us, China, and Russia, never is there a moment, seemingly, where there is an alignment with two against one. But now, it certainly looks like Russia and China are aligning, not just themselves, but with India, South Africa, Brazil, and many others. You know how we went into Venezuela and tried to steal their oil? Well, guess what? Brazil does more international trade with China than they do with us. And they're in our hemisphere. They're very close to us. So when we say we are being run by a lawless rogue oligarchy at the top, they don't care about us. They don't care about what happens to the average citizen in this country. They don't care that our dollar is worth shit. They don't care that we don't have living wages or ability to save money anymore, or a healthcare system that has any value, or they're pillaging the hell out of our environment. These are the real issues. And all the while, we want to pretend that somehow American exceptionalism is still a thing. And I see it all the time. All the time. There is a consensus amongst the population that is still asleep. There's a consensus among people in the population that think Trump's doing a great job. Not that he's an abject failure, but that he's doing a great job. And that he's not a cuck for Israel. It's all a means to an end. Okay. Hopefully, if you're here, you understand how significant this circumstance that Tucker is talking about right now is having on the greater picture.
If you combine those two. So you can't do that. And it's pretty clear that the last administration intentionally drove Russia into an alliance with China, which they now have. Just to be really clear, just to bottom line it, if Donald Trump wants to commit one act as president that will secure him a place in history forever as a hero, it would be to bring Russia back into alliance with the United States. Oh, Russia's bad. Right. Kind of hard to say that after Venezuela. And it's tiresome anyway. No, Russia is not bad or good. Russia is essential to the United States. We cannot survive a global conflict if Russia and China are aligned against us. Period. And it couldn't be more simple, and it shouldn't be very hard at this point to make that deal.
We have watched in real time over this past decade how Russia and China have been drawn together. Whether it was the Democrats saber-rattling Russia or the Republicans saber-rattling China, it's still all interconnected. We are run by a government that hates its citizens, hates them, despises them. doesn't want them thinking, wants them working basically as rats in a lab, conveyor belt, if you will. And even if things are bad in other parts of the world, what good does that serve us? If we're so great, if America is so damn great, and you want to look elsewhere and see what else, what I know for sure is that this can still be a great nation, but it refuses to get out of its own way. And we are an easily manipulated and propagandized culture. We seldom are able to put our differences aside on critical issues. And this is a real test right here with what's going on in Minneapolis and Venezuela. It's all connected. Just as Tucker said, we can be a great nation. Doesn't mean we are. We're far from. We're actually pretty shitty. But we know what it takes. We know what is needed. But the powers that be don't want it. And as our country continues to get driven into the seventh circle of hell with a complete burden of epic proportions when it comes to our debt and deficit, devaluing of our currency, complete lack of value in our properties, everything. It's all going to hell. All of it. How we respond is the key. If we deal with the Zio state, that's going to be a huge part of it because it's interconnected to the banking system of which we have no control right now. But that doesn't mean we can't get it back. And as I said, the only way that this is going to happen, the only way, is if we disassemble the Zio state. If we disassemble the systemic control that Zionism has over this country. That seems to be a pretty unifying issue. Most people agree that they don't want to adhere to the will of the state of Israel anymore. Great. Everything that's happening is interrelated to that. ICE agents are trained by Israel. You like having Israel here in our country, policing our communities? I don't. And I doubt Tucker or anybody else with half a brain would either, no matter how partisan they may be.
There's no reason to pay any attention to the unelected leader of Ukraine. Now, the obstacle in the way is not geostrategic. There is no argument for continuing a proxy war, which is what it is. United States versus Russia. We've been at war for 4 years. All of us are pretending we're not. We are. There's no reason to continue that on the basis of America's national interest. That is not in our interest, and it never has been in our interest. And by the way, Russia is a Christian country, a remarkable country, a very serious country, that we have a lot in common with, whether you like it or not. Oh, he's bad. Okay, stop. We need Russia. And the only reason we are not in alliance with Russia is because the foreign policy establishment in the United States, the weapons manufacturers, and particularly the neocons believe that they somehow own Russia or want to retake Russia or something, and Putin is in the way. He kicked out the oligarchs. That was gravely offensive to the American finance establishment and to the American foreign policy establishment, and acted on his own country's behalf. Whatever. None of that even matters at this point. Ignore these people. He has to be our enemy? No. If Putin is our enemy, if Russia is our enemy, we cannot survive a global conflict. Sorry.
And I agree. And that's where we're heading. We're heading for a global conflict, a third world war, if you will. And what is it going to take for the American people to say enough is enough? We're not going down this road. When do we say we are not a war economy anymore? It's going to take a hell of a drop. But I wonder if things are so bad and the people in charge are making it so much worse, why is it so difficult for the average citizen to recognize that it will only be their demise that's coming as a result. No one is going to be saved by this system. And it is unfortunate that a lot of people are content with this idea that, well, if I live in the right part of town, like in the Hunger Games, I'll be okay. The rest of them, that's their bad luck. Either we are the United States of America or we're not. It's pretty simple. 1.5 trillion. How that doesn't scare the ever-living shit out of people, I don't know. But I know it scares me, and I am not taking my eye off of that ball. And the worst part about it is, ladies and gentlemen, there will be very little, and I mean very little, outside of the likes of Thomas Massey and maybe Ro Khanna that are going to say anything about a 1.5 trillion budget. Rand Paul, maybe Bernie Sanders, but that's it. AOC might throw a few crumbs and acknowledge it's not good and cosplay a little bit more. But overall, we do not have a government that cares. We have a government, a runaway, rogue government that is owned hook, line, and sinker by corporate special interests, that is oligarchic, Zionist, mostly Jewish billionaires. And at some point, we have to wake up to that reality and have a revolution. Now, as I said, it doesn't have to be violent, but the powers that be are daring us to make it violent. And that's why they have these agents, if you will, in the streets, terrorizing people. So they want them scared. They don't want them fighting back. They have them there because they know that the population, at least a portion of it, is waking up to that reality and they don't like it anymore. Good. It's going to take some time. And therein lies why it's such a big deal when it comes to Tucker Carlson, when he makes that statement. Why is it such a big deal? Because Tucker Carlson is being targeted, along with Candace Owens, by Israel in their own Knesset. From Candace Owens, the Likud party in Israel just named me and Tucker Carlson as enemies that must be fought. These people are murderers. Murderers are threatening me and Tucker Carlson over speech. How is this at all acceptable to our government? And what's even more amazing, no one's going to say anything. No one in a position of power is going to say, yeah, that's pretty effed up. You probably shouldn't say something like that. Maybe Israel shouldn't be threatening our citizens, much less killing them. This is a pretty serious problem. Colin, can I have the article, please? Knesset member decries new enemy, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. Just look at that. Look at that nice little Jewish boy right there with his little hat on. Doesn't he look adorable? These people are the biggest psychopaths because they are completely emasculated men. They have no muscle tone whatsoever, but they've got a really itchy trigger finger. So keep that in mind. Always be cognizant of who is making these statements. And I will assure you that a man who looks like a cuckold like that guy looks, believe me when I tell you, he'll drop a bomb. He has no problem doing it. In fact, he looks forward to it. In an address to the Knesset on Monday, Likud lawmaker Dan Iluz decried what he said was a new enemy rising within American politics, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. Now, if you guys wonder why I cover Candace and Tucker extensively on this channel, particularly on the solo show, this is why. Do you know why I cover Charlie Kirk extensively? Because he holds the key in many respects to the Zio state. They're not putting anybody else up there on that list. There's no Nick Fuentes. There's no Hassan Piker. There's no Jimmy Dore, Cenk Uygur. I could go on and on. You know what I'm talking about. They're listing those two people in particular because they know that those are two people that actually have an impact on the political and social discourse in our arena. And that's why he's naming those names. We are used to enemies from outside. We fight terror tunnels of Hamas. Oh, yes, Hamas. We fight the ballistic missiles of Iran. No, Iran defends themselves against you. But today, I look at the West, our greatest ally, and I see a new enemy rising from within. Said Ilus, who was originally from Canada, I thought he was from Israel. Guys, am I wrong? I thought they were all born there. I thought they were all native to that land. What happened? I was lied to. That's what happened. I am speaking of a poison being sold to the American people as patriotism. I'm speaking of the intellectual vandalism of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. Eluse's comments come as the Republican Party has been roiled in recent months by debates over the mainstreaming of anti-Semitic influencers within the GOP. This is coming from a guy who was born in Canada, relocated there, probably stole land from somebody in the West Bank, and now calls Israel home. I'm just saying. In October, conservative commentator Tucker Carlson hosted far-right anti-Semitic influencer Nick Fuentes on his platform, igniting outrage from Jewish conservatives who warned of the growing reach of anti-Semitic voices. Owens has long made anti-Semitic rhetoric a hallmark of her YouTube channel. Colin, you're doing it again. Stay with me, baby. Come on now. It's only 2 hours. Nope. Stop messing with my stream, please. See what happens when you try to produce a show that you don't know what you're doing? You mess up my stream. Back to the topic at hand. Owens has long made anti-Semitic rhetoric a hallmark of her YouTube channel, which has 5.7 million subscribers. A recent analysis of her content by the Jewish People Policy Institute. Hey, you gotta love those NGOs, don't you? How much money do you think that organization has received from our tax dollars? Found that 3/4 of her videos that mention Jews were anti-Semitic. They claim to fight the woke left. They are no different than the woke left. The radical left tears down the statues of Thomas Jefferson. Tucker Carlson tears down the legacy of Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill is not as great a guy as you guys would like to make him out to be. I'm just putting that out there. The radical left says Western civilization is evil. Candace Owens says the roots of our faith are demonic. It is the same sickness. Zionism is a sickness and it is demonic. So I agree with Candace. And you are a demon as far as I'm concerned. Carlson and Owens are among the right-wing influencers who have made opposition to Israel a centerpiece of their output at a time when support for Israel is declining. Thank God, if God exists. Among conservatives, particularly young conservatives. In November, Amici, Chikli, we'll go with that. The Israeli diaspora minister echoed Eluse's concerns in an interview with the New York Post. What a rag. New York Post is the oldest newspaper in the United States, by the way, telling the outlet that he was far more concerned, about anti-Semitism on the right than on the left. The comments were notable because Chikli is himself a right-wing anti-woke warrior who, in a first for Israel, has stoked relationships with far-right European parties that in some cases have ties to the Nazis. One of the worst moments was when a popular conservative broadcaster called one of the most vile Holocaust deniers in America one of the most honest historians. That legitimizes hate. It normalizes it. Appears to refer to Carlson's past praise of Holocaust revisionist Darryl Cooper. Shickley also warned against the rising influence of Fuentes and Cooper among young Americans. Anti-Semitism has become fashionable for Gen Z. They listen to podcasts, not professors. When people like Nick Fuentes and Darryl Cooper are treated as thought leaders, that's dangerous. These are neo-Nazis. Did you stop to think that maybe a genocide is not such a good idea? The Times of Israel asked Deleuze whether he was worried about appearing to interfere with American politics. Defending the alliance between America and Israel is not interfering. I am in touch with many pro-Israel conservatives who know that Candace and Tucker are a threat to America as much as to Israel. Now, you understand, when you speak in those type of language tones, you know what that means. Hey, I'm not suggesting that somebody target Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, but if they did, I'm not going to cry about it. I'm not going to complain about it. I would say that, hey, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Am I right? Well, that's their position. Top GOP officials, including Vice President Cook for Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, have largely dismissed calls from Jewish conservatives, including Ben Shapiro and others, to draw a line against anti-Semitic influencers. That's very sweet of him to offer that. Do you think you are the first to delegitimize the Jewish people? We are the people of eternity. Now, one has to ask themselves, because again, I've heard Zionism, well, not Zionism, but let's just say liberalism, conservatism, they're all mental disorders in terms of political ideology. I'll tell you what's a mental disorder. Zionism. Zionism, unequivocally, is a mental disorder. And whether it comes from the left or the right doesn't matter. It is one and the same. And I bring this up because, as I mentioned, Tucker Carlson gets the response that he got in lieu of the statements he made about endless war, particularly on behalf of Israel, now boosting the budget to $1.5 trillion. Probably for war with Iran. Who knows? But there's also a very interesting caveat here regarding Candace Owens. Now, for those of you who know a thing or two about the history of Christian Zionism in the United States, if anybody, and I mean anybody, had an impact on the growth of Christian Zionism in the United States over the second half of the 20th century, when it really took shape, Jerry Falwell more than anyone else. Pat Robertson's up there, but Jerry Falwell, he was a real piece of work. And if you have seen the movie The People versus Larry Flint, he plays a substantial outsized role in that film. And he also played a substantial outsized role in the growth of evangelism in the United States, Liberty University, among other things that he's done. And so it turns out, according to Candace Owens, that there's an interesting tie-in, no surprise, between Jerry Falwell and Israel.
48, the very year that Israel became a nation, Carrie Hezekiah died from cirrhosis of the liver, and his son, Jerry Falwell Sr., had an immediate radical conversion to Christianity. Bootlegging, trafficking, smuggling, be damned, because his business was now going to be the church, ministering. He became a televangelist, and he established Lynchburg College in 1971, which would eventually change its name to Liberty University that we know today. And yes, it is true, in 1979, Jerry Falwell Sr. was gifted a Learjet from the founder of the Likud Party.
Now, as Candace is going to point out, and I'm going to point out, why would the Likud Party of Israel, the fascist party of Israel, give Jerry Falwell a private jet what would be the motivation behind that? Now, they'll say that the reason they did it is because they wanted to help him spread the gospel. Now, that may be true. But there's a catch. That gospel must be pro-Israel. And to every Christian Zionist in this country, the gospel of Jerry Falwell is the one you follow. That was picked up later by Kenneth Copeland, John Hagee, Joel Osteen, Pat Robertson, and many others in between. For the 70 million evangelicals in the United States today, this is where a huge part of it comes from. And when you are a total grifter, full stop, like Jerry Falwell, of course. Why not pay him off? Bill Maher, way back in the day, did a great eulogy of Jerry Falwell. You know, when Bill was actually somewhat normal. This is a prime example of color me shocked that Jerry Falwell was in bed with the Israelis in order to facilitate the growth of his ministry in the United States. Why would that surprise anybody? And now you understand why Israel is targeting Candace Owens.
Then Prime Minister of Israel, Menachem Begin. Now, that's pretty nice of Israel. But I always am wondering, in exchange for what? Like, in exchange for what? Because that kind of reminds me about how Bibi Netanyahu wanted to take Turning Point USA to the next level. He offered to take Turning Point USA to the next level. Charlie Kirk said no.
And we know what happened next. The idea that there is anybody who believes that there is any possible outcome to the end of Charlie's life other than what we've been saying since September 10th, you have to be a dupe. It's too obvious. But as I said, the powers that be are drunk with power, and they are convinced beyond any doubt that the people are simply not going to fight back. So they are just allowed to do whatever they want until they're not. That's our job. Our job is to ensure that this does not continue. That's what we are tasked with doing. And the more we talk about it, the more it is repeated, the more it should stick in a person's mind that no one is entitled to comfort in this world. No one. It's a privilege. And that privilege must constantly be checked, because at any moment it can be removed. We have been led by false idols for far too long. And it is our job to expose them, bring them into the light, and start a new path. And that path does not involve any attachment, involvement, financially, politically, socially, economically, religiously, with the state of Israel. That has to end. Period. This has been going on for over 3 generations, and it's got to stop. And again, it's all connected. Jerry Falwell said yes. Charlie Kirk said no. And we all know what happened, right?
But apparently nobody in the mainstream media is interested in answering the question as to why he wanted to take Turning Point to USA to the next level. What does Israel have to do with young evangelicals, a young evangelical organization? Also, how? That's my other big question. How exactly was he planning to get that money into Turning Point USA? I'm assuming he wasn't going to write like a blank check from the Likud party.
No, what he was going to do, which is exactly what's always been done, which is, we are Israel's bitch. President Netanyahu Milikowski tells Congress to give him the money. He gets the money, and then he gives it to Turning Point USA. It's pretty much that simple as far as I can see. Just a thought.
Surely he was going to accomplish that through other people and their organizations, because Israel never gets their hands dirty if they can avoid it. That's the lesson of yesterday, by the way. You employ Christians to do your dirty work.
And she's right. And we have been saying this for a while, as we pointed out with Kufi on Thursday's stream. The Jewish Zionists, again, it's stereotypical, I know. The Jewish Zionists provide the money, and the Christian Zionists are the flock. And that's how this has worked. It's worked this way for multiple generations. Because as Jen has pointed out, in the United States, Christian Zionists outnumber Jewish Zionists about probably 8-1 to 10-1. That's a big deal. And so in lieu of that, you can understand why one relationship begets the other. These Christian Zionists that we see that would go to evangelical churches like that of a Pat Robertson or that of a Jerry Falwell or that of a John Hagee, these people don't have money. I mean, they have some money, but they don't have real money. The Jewish Zionists that live in places like Miami, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, they have money, but they don't have the numbers. So they have to figure out, well, how do we blend these two things together? That's how they do it. And they've been doing it for a long time, as Candace is pointing out, as I'm pointing out, as everybody else should hear. And our job is to continue to expose this grift until it is no more. Nothing brings more terror and decimation to the world than the United States in conjunction with Israel. We are the terrorists. We are the baddies. And we will continue to be them until this state is removed from the clutches of our citizenry once and for all. Or our citizens are removed from their clutches once and for all, I should say. Netanyahu sitting down for an interview saying they hope to no longer be dependent or need any money from the United States in the next 10 years. Great. The second they don't have us is the second they no longer exist. And I truly believe that they are a rogue state of the worst kind. But that's why we do this, to remind everyone of just how evil, sinister, and disgusting these people truly are, and why it is imperative that we continue to speak truth to power. Why does Israel target Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson? Because they're a threat. They're an actual threat. That's it. If our channel wasn't a threat, if what we were saying was not threatening, then they wouldn't suppress the shit out of it like they do. I've seen clips recently where there were 400 views and 200 likes and 100 comments. It's deliberate, it's on purpose, and we're not going to change. Because the goal here is to get this revolution moving. That's our goal. We're not going to be the only ones involved, but we're going to try to do everything we can to help make this desperate change before we run out of time. And we are running out of time. But at least a lot of us are now awake. So let's get some shit done. A lot of people are counting on us, guys. If you're enjoying the conversation so far, which we hope you are, please consider going over. Oh, okay. Well, don't let the door hit you in your rear end on the way out. When I'm doing something, please don't distract me. I'm asking you not to do that. Patreon.com/revolutionary change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty, but suppressed and still growing channel. If you would be so kind, I would also ask that you do the following. Make sure that you subscribe as a backup to Pontificating with Pete on YouTube. This is our second channel. This is the channel that you go to in case we get our third copyright strike over the next 3 weeks, which is entirely possible. Now, the reason I say 3 weeks is because our first copyright strike is expected to expire. See, when you get a copyright strike, it's on the books for 90 days. After 90 days, it gets removed. You don't have to pay anything, even though one of them is trying to extort us right now. So if you could, please go over to Pontificating with Pete on YouTube and subscribe there. Also, please go over and subscribe to Revolutionary Change on Rumble if you haven't subscribed there as well. We've been hovering anywhere from 900 to close to 1,000 viewers this evening. So guys, if you could do that, it would be tremendously appreciated. It makes all the difference in the world. Again, doesn't cost anything. We really appreciate your support. But for those that are contributing, big shout out to Khalidi5717 for becoming a YouTube member. Thank you very, very much. Libertarian Social Democrat with the 199. Did you see James Fishback's interview on Tucker Carlson? I haven't seen it. I've seen some snippets of it. Jen and I will be discussing Fishback on Monday since it's about Florida. Jim Talib with the $5 super sticker. Thank you very, very much. Always a pleasure, my friend. And Libertarian Social Democrat with the $4.99. I'm not against speaking different languages, but we should not be a bilingual nation where a lot of people are at a disadvantage, mainly Black Americans. Well, here's the thing. We're not a bilingual nation, but there are parts of the country where English is not the first language, particularly Miami and parts of Southern California, parts of South Texas, parts of New Mexico, and parts of Arizona. And that's the nature of the first peoples that were here. What do you think? You think that they just showed up? You know how much bigger Mexico used to be before we had the Mexico Wars in the 1840s, I believe? Again, I understand. But you know what? If we lived in a country that actually gave a shit about education, which we don't, people in this country would be speaking 2 or 3 languages. That's what they do in other developed countries. Did you ever stop to wonder why the Germans, why the Italians, why the Spanish, why the Japanese? Why did they speak English? It's because they all wanted to speak it, or is it because that they're a more advanced culture and they think, you know, maybe if we spoke multiple languages, that would be good for us? I wish I had learned Spanish when I was younger. I've been practicing it on Duolingo almost every day for 15 minutes a day ever since. Now, I can't speak it well, but I can understand a lot of it now, which is great. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. Patman with the 7 pounds. It's great to see you from Scotland. Peter, have you heard almost 50 protesters have been killed in Iran? Total internet blackout. I am well aware that there is a protest that is going on right now in the thousands in the streets of Tehran. Now, what that means, I'm not 100% sure. Now, a friend of mine who is Iranian, who is from Tehran, has made it very clear. They do not want the Shah in power, but they also do not want the West involved in anything that has to do with Iran. So you're kind of in a lose-lose situation here. What's the next step? What's the next path? I'm not sure. But I am inclined to believe that if the Iranian people choose their own path, that's entirely up to them. I have nothing to say against it. The problem we're seeing is that Israel is loving what they're seeing because they think that this is an opportunity for them. Okay. Now, maybe the Iranian people don't also want to go to war with Israel, and that's why they're protesting. Who knows? The problem is we're getting a lot of information secondhand, and we don't know for sure what to believe. What I do know is that the Iranian regime, like many others, is a suppressive regime, and I will not support them. I also will not support the United States starting a world war with them on Israel's behalf. Isn't that funny how nuance can work in politics? TPS reports with the $10. A Palestinian activist, 31-year-old Hiba Miraisi, I believe that's it, Miraisi, is in the UK, is going on 70 days of a hunger strike. So We're going to talk about the hunger strike at greater length on Monday. And this is another story that gets ignored. When it comes to actual geopolitics and systemic change that we desperately seek and need, we have entered a phase where unless it's at the barrel of a gun, nothing's going to change. Starving yourself is not going to change anything. And I hate saying that because I wish it did. But we have to be realistic about what can and what can't happen. And that's why it's not getting covered. Now, it would be terrible if people knew and it was covered, but is that still going to change anything is the question. And my thought is probably not. But it's still worth covering, and we will do that on Monday. Ronwell, it's been a while, my friend. Thank you for the $5. I'm for Jesse Ventura, Cynthia McKinney against two parties for president, and Thomas Massey against J.D. Vance in the GOP primary. I'd love these three people. Hey, my friend, I'd be behind that. Sounds good to me. And Brian Burns with the $2. Parts of North New England and New York are bilingual too. Excellent point, my friend. Thank you for that. So once again, if you guys are enjoying this stream, which we hope you are, please make sure once again to smash that like button, to share the stream, to subscribe if you haven't subscribed, because we know that they unsubscribe people all the time. They also do not honor the clicking of the bell. So make sure that you do that. And we very much appreciate it. And it's always great to see our Aussie friends check in. And I definitely like that profile picture. Greetings from the land down under. I hope to get there one day. I don't know if that's a good accent or not, but, we'll see. If I am, and I misspoke, not the Shah, the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. I say this because on the flip side of this argument, and the reason why we need to do away with this Zio state, it's because right now, even though their ability to control the narrative is not working anywhere near the way that it used to, we still have to be cognizant of those that are going to preach a message that is going to involve the complete encapsulation of our media sphere, the ability to have proper discourse when it comes to the topic of Israel. And if we don't have it, we are again giving up our liberty for security, among other things, or we just choose not to fight back the way that we should. Now, I bring this up because for those who may not be aware of the Donalds, this person that is in charge of this is a new position because, the government just likes to create shit out of thin air. The U.S. anti-Semitism czar, Rabbi Yehuda Kaplan. This is what he had to say about free speech. It's not good.
And the secretary have made it a priority that they are going to not tolerate anti-Semitism anywhere and by anybody.
The amount of hate speech that we've seen during this time, I mean, it's off the charts. You look through social media, you see it even on television. The lines, they're not even blurred anymore. They're gone. How do you even begin to tackle such a phenomenon?
Well, I mean, he's going to kvetch really hard. He might even drop his bagel. I don't know. The poor fella, he might return his soup at the deli, Really terrible. Really unfortunate, because words are dangerous, right? Very dangerous.
You have to have an understanding that, first of all, in this country, we believe very strongly in free speech. It's the basis in our Constitution.
We do?
And we also believe in the freedom of religion. You have to balance that. But you balance that in two ways. Europe has hate speech laws, probably some of the best on the books, but it's selectively enforced. So if you selectively enforce a rule, it's not going to have any effect whatsoever. And you can see how it's had no effect in Europe in monitoring and stopping the hate. So it's not necessarily the laws to mandate hate speech. We have to get back to having the media being accurate. Because if you take a look, when the New York Times had a story, and they had a picture of a malnourished child saying the famine in Gaza, and it was a medically sick child with a lot of history, and they had used other pictures from Yemen, 50 million people saw that article. But yet only 100,000 people saw their apology. That breeds hate. By not having that, that breeds hate. So
what you have here is a liar, deliberate, and somebody who fully supports genocide because he fully supports the Zionist state and the Greater Israel Project. And this is a person who has been given a government position of influence to spread this bullshit. That's what ends up happening here. Again, kvetching. That's what they're doing. The problem is that they do have a lot of money and they have a lot of influence for now. And there's going to be a point to this in a minute.
we have to do a better job in enforcing and educating people to actually do their own research.
What would that entail? Would that entail clamping down on people that choose to speak out against this tyranny that's happening right now? For example, what just happened in New York the other day? You know, we saw that Mayor Mamdani and AOC had commentary regarding the protesters from Al Jawad, who is part of a Free Palestine movement. And their commentary was very specific pertaining to what was going on at the, I think it's called the Children of Israel Synagogue in Q Hill Gardens in Queens. Now, if you're not familiar with this, but I think this is a pretty big deal, you saw what Mayor Mamdani and what AOC had to say, that they condemn the anti-Semitism, that was bad, that people were chanting, "We support Hamas." Do you know what they were protesting? That part they didn't mention. Mamdani, to his credit, actually made a statement about it. Colin, please grab me AOC's tweet. I want to put it up. They were protesting the fact that this synagogue was doing land sales in the West Bank. You know, the thing that we've been exposing in various parts of this country, whether in New Jersey or Los Angeles in particular, over the past 2 years? Well, guess what? They were doing that the other day at this synagogue in Queens. That's why they were protesting. And they had a whole bunch of different chants, whole bunch. But the one that they centered on was the fact that they say, "We support Hamas." Okay. Now, I would be the first to tell them that that's actually pretty dumb, that you shouldn't say that, even if you believe it, and even if one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for something to target. They're looking for something to say, you see? That's why you get czars like this fuckhead over here. That's why they get hired. Because they want you to be distracted. But don't be distracted. I didn't see one person bring up what was really going down. Not one. What was really going down? What we've been saying has been going on forever. They're mass murdering these people and they're stealing their land. And then they're selling it to rich, affluent Jews only in this synagogue. And in AOC's infinite wisdom, because I'm going to just let Mamdani off the hook for this reason, 2 reasons. Number one, he just stepped into this position. He said that he doesn't agree with the statement about Hamas, called them a terrorist organization. All right, whatever. But he was asked, do you have any opinion regarding what the synagogue was actually doing? And he said, I completely condemn any type of land grabs and land sales, which is a violation of international law. Now, again, I don't know what type of authority he has at this moment to deal with it. But remember, one thing that Mamdani campaigned on that he said he was going to do, he said he was going to cancel Israel contracts in New York City. Okay, I'll believe it when I see it. But AOC decided to chime in with this great piece of stupidity on her part. Hey, so marching into a predominantly Jewish neighborhood and leading with a chant saying we support Hamas is a disgusting and anti-Semitic thing to do. Pretty basic. Protesters in Queens chant, say it loud, say it clear, we support Hamas here. Okay, so once again, why would you make this statement like an egregious failure of a politician that you are without mentioning why they're there and why they said that? No mention of that. Let's just focus on the words of protecting the Zio scum in New York City. I haven't seen Alex say a fucking word about this, about what they're doing. Mamdani at least said something. She's not saying anything. So when we say AOC Pelosi, AOC fraud, and she decides to stick her place into these, she sticks her neck out where it doesn't belong. That's what she does. And I do not believe that this is her district. But nevertheless, how can you not know, A, that this is why they were chanting this, and B, if you didn't know, you do not belong in that position, and if you did know, you're even more pathetic than I thought possible. You don't have the political wherewithal to think maybe a statement to the effect of, while I do not agree with the chant of we support Hamas, it is reprehensible that people in Queens are selling Palestinian people's land that they were likely murdered on. No, you can't say that. No, that didn't even come to mind. And this fucking idiot's running for president in 2028. You should see some of the commentary that was below her statement, including one of my favorites, ZEI Squirrel, who's one of the best handles on all of social media. This is why you know that she's a fraud. And anyone else who wants to play along with this bullshit because she cosplays very well as an influencer. Again, she's a great influencer. I'm not going to take that away from her. She's got a hell of a following. But as a legislator, as a leader, she's a joke. And this proves it. How is it that I know what to say in this if I wanted to even act like a politician? If I just wanted to act like, listen, I'm totally going to be a politician right now. I'm going to be like Bill Clinton. I'm going to be like the son of a monk. I'm going to totally be like the president of the United States. No, I'll be like Arnold from the government, a ship in California. How come I know how to do this? How come this is so fucking simple in my mind? And she doesn't know this? She can't say this? How is that possible? Unless she's got big plans. She's got big fucking plans. Only a dimwit could miss this. It only took all of 2 seconds for me to look into it and say, well, why were they there? Why were they in front of that synagogue? Hey, did you know that we mentioned a synagogue that said that, yeah, you know, Americans are probably going to have to die for Israel? Well, that's coming next. Because that's what's coming with fucking Iran. And you know what they did? They called the cops on us. And the only reason we found out that that was the case was because I made nice with the popo that came to my house. And they were not nice. They were actually pretty intimidating and threatening when they first got here. But I cooled them off, made chat, made nice. And then eventually they were like, you know what? Yeah, we'll tell you who did it. This is why we have to deal with this. And if you think that our politicians are going to help us, that they're going to lead the effort away from this shit, never. This is proof. This was a fucking layup, and she bricked it. How do you brick a layup like this in your own fucking backyard? This is in Queens, and you fuck it up? Wow. I mean, I knew her instincts weren't that good, but man, that's bad. That is like really bad. But okay. You're never going to be president, Alex, so you might as well give it up. You might make a lot of money and write a book that'll be a bestseller. Congratulations. But as Jen said, you were the Mockingjay. Could have been. And you chose to capitulate to the empire. You may be in the capital now, but District 12 is not that far away. We cannot and we must not accept this level of capitulation. We must demand more. That's why we have people like Jesse the Body Ventura. Why don't we have more people like him? Real honest actors. When it comes to the average politician today, if I even sniff an ounce of phony baloney, that's the end. There's very few of them out there that don't have it. Very few. A host, well, maybe. But this is why I encourage all of you, if you are so kind, which I hope you are, because I know you, I think some of you like our channel, and I think we're doing a halfway decent job. Consider whichever side it's on, using the QR code. Take your phone, highlight it on that QR code. I want you all to check out our pack, Revolutionary Change Pack. You want to help make some change in 2026? This is our pack. And we are going to help Shama Sawant, hopefully Butch Ware, and a few others in between. So consider going over and getting involved. That will help. Why do we have to make a difference? Why do we have to get involved? Because Lil Ben Shapiro is just not stopping. And he's not going to stop. When you understand why, if he likes something that you're doing, that's a sign that you're probably doing it wrong. And when it comes to everything going on right now, this is what this little fruitcake had to say.
Are on notice. The Iranian regime, President Trump has already warned, listen, you start shooting protesters en masse, and the U.S. isn't going to sit still for that. The credibility of the United States is very, very high right now under President Trump.
Well, I wonder what universe this little bitch is living under, but no, I don't think that the credibility of the United States is very high right now. In fact, I think it's probably pretty low, maybe as low as it's been in a very long time. Maybe as low as it's been in the dog days of endless war under both Bush and Obama, and maybe even further back than that. And yet, if Lil Ben Shapiro says that thing. That poor little guy. Anyway, if Lil Ben Shapiro is actually happy with where things are in this country right now, then that must mean that things are really bad. Because only somebody like him would make such a statement, and it would be the complete inverse. If Ben Shapiro says you're doing a great job, then I would be scared out of my mind.
Because President Trump has the stones to do the thing. And one further note here. I've seen that there are a lot of people who are very, very upset on the so-called isolationist right. People who have in the past, for example, suggested that the only people who would be against Nicolas Maduro's continued regime are globo homo, for example, something Tucker Carlson said. Only globo homo would want Maduro ousted because he's supposedly a social conservative, which is not.
No, listen, you know what I want? I want Maduro out because he's a really terrible person who doesn't like Israel. So anyone who doesn't like Israel has to go. Okay? And next, we are going to deal with Iran. I ran so far away because I'm a coward. Yes, Benny, you are a coward. You're a bitch. And you are an enemy of the United States of America. And we all know you pick Israel over the United States any day. One of the most punchable faces I've ever seen.
Not actually true. Well, I suppose the administration may have to explain to people like Tucker Carlson that, in fact, it was not Globo Homo that ousted Nicolas Maduro. It was a conservative Republican president, a gutsy president who makes the calls to preserve America's national security and her foreign interests.
Oh, so now it's not about national security, it's about foreign interests. You see, they use those words very, very carefully. People like Lil Benny make it very clear. Again, if you go back to when Trump first ran for president, Shapiro hated him. Hated him. And now he loves him. Absolutely loves him. What does that tell you? This neocon scum-sucking motherfucker of the worst kind, a person who would send your children and your grandparents off to die in war if it meant protecting Israel, he's saying that the president of the United States is doing a great job with Maduro, and now Iran better be on the lookout. Only a cuck pussy bitch like you would talk like that. The average American knows that somebody like you is protected and would never have to face the consequences of his actions when he says what he says. You want war so damn bad? Why don't you go fight it? But we all know he can't, because if we had a standing army of Ben Shapiros, we would be finished before the war even started. They would just lay down their arms. As Jen said, he can't fight a speed bag, so he wants other people to fight it for him. You know who Ben Shapiro is? He's that guy in grade school that would talk. He would go up to somebody and say that person over there was talking shit about you, and then go back and say the same thing. Yeah, did you hear what that guy was saying about you in class? Oh, you didn't hear about it? Oh, well, listen, he was saying some really bad stuff about you. That's what happened. You didn't hear from me though. I didn't say anything. Okay, just remember, we know we're friends, right? We're chums. Okay, go to it. Hey, see that guy over there? Yeah, he's Martin Prince from The Simpsons. Totally Martin Prince. Kisses the teacher's ass, starts little trouble. All kinds of trouble. Little Benny. He's a bad boy. He needs to be punished.
Interests in the Western Hemisphere and her interests internationally, undercutting enemies of the United States, ranging from Russia to China to Iran to Cuba, with moves like this. An audacious move from President Trump. It'll be fascinating to see what happens next.
No, it's not going to be fascinating to see what happens next if he's listening to a scumbag like you. That's the problem. And I would stuff him in a locker. That's where he belongs. And I mention this because he's not only a bad person, he's also somebody who has constantly talked smack about a whole bunch of other people. And that's why I'm not necessarily against Shapiro saying what he says. I'll tell you why. Because Shapiro gives the game in a way that others don't. See, some are more subtle about it and protective about it, but not Benny. He's pretty bad at it. And he likes to go after people that are probably always going to technically look for a way to be on the right side of the corporate establishment, like Megyn Kelly, who I don't trust as far as I could throw, and I don't like her. But when she makes a statement like this, it's proof that as long as Shapiro keeps talking, the opposite of what is intended is what is going to happen. At least I hope and pray that that's what's coming. So if he's endorsing everything that's going on right now, from Venezuela, the police state, to 1.5 trillion in military spending for assuming Iran, among other things. He doesn't have a lot of allies. A lot of it is just bribery and assumption, because that's what's on the menu for now. Doesn't mean it will stay that way. And so in this very brief statement that I wanted to pull, to just kind of bring this home, if you can't keep Megyn Kelly in your corner, you've got a problem. But that's a good thing. That's good for us, because if Ben Shapiro opens his mouth, that's good for everybody.
Asking myself. All costs.
Well, that's what they do. They are led by Shapiro. They are pro-Israel at all costs. And as we have been emphasizing time and time again, you cannot be pro-Israel enough. There is no such thing. You can only do as you're told. And the second you deviate from it ever so slightly, you are subject to correction or removal. And that is what even a capitulator like Megyn Kelly is apparently subject to. She can't be nuanced. She does exactly what she's told. And even that's not enough.
Who won't tell the truth about Israel, no matter what it is, and will cancel you if you don't befriend or defriend people who do. And so this whole thing has made me reevaluate. Like, I'm just starting from square one, basically, on Israel right now. And I'm actually day by day taking a much harder look at who are they.
Do you agree with Megyn Kelly? Comment below.
I do agree with Megyn Kelly, but I also agree with what's being said about Megyn Kelly. She's a grifter who's trying to find her way out without getting herself removed. Yeah. What else could it be? This person changes her opinion every time that she goes live. But what she also is aware of is that her platform is so big and influential that if she dared deviate away from the pro-Israel narrative, she could be in a lot of trouble, if you know what I mean. So yeah, one thing that Jen and I have pointed out time and again since September 10th, a lot of people got their mind right. A lot of people were questioning what was going on, but then they saw the public execution of one of the most influential political commentators, organizers, and they did it in such a fashion as if to say, you get out of line, well, this is what's coming. So be ready. Well, Ben Shapiro talks, and whatever he says, just believe the opposite. Now, I don't know if Megyn Kelly believes that or not. What I do believe is that she said it because that's what she thought she needed to say. Do I think a lot of them believe that Tyler Robinson actually did this? Absolutely not. But you are at the mercy of who your corporate donors and owners want you to say and not say. I haven't even had the time tonight to dig in deeper on Tyler Robinson or a few other people that were involved. See, I try to put these stories together very carefully in terms of what we're going to cover and where the most important parts of the story come together, which is how do we form this revolution? How do we get as many people behind us as possible to recognize that a deep-seated change in this country is needed before it's too late? And so as we close this evening, I haven't talked about Erika Kirk in terms of her involvement. with what's been going on pre and post Charlie's demise. But all these little stories start popping up that lead me to believe that A, she wasn't just a honeypot, which I 1,000% believe she was. I also believe that she's intelligence. I believe that she was put in the position that she's in because her family's involved in intelligence and because she's directly involved. And when someone says, well, how do you know that? How can you be so sure? Well, this is how I can be sure.
We have 5 major threats that make our grid extremely vulnerable that we've presented to congressional officials. 1 being cyber, 2 being hackers, 3 being physical threats, 4th one is solar EMP, and the 5th one is man-made EMP. So the concern that we have is that we put out this critical information, and when we go over this risk analysis, they hear what we're saying, but they don't want to take action.
Well, there are 18 critical infrastructures in the United States: food, water, transportation, communications, etc. All 17 of the others depend on electricity.
So Erika Kirk was working for intelligence this past decade. This video clip apparently is from either 2013 or 2014. You know, once you're a part of it, you don't leave it. It's always a part of you. And the fact that she has this in her resume, the fact that she has this in her portfolio. I mean, again, this is central casting. This is what it is. Very few people ever question how they get where they get. Now, I've often said that Charlie was a talent and he was always going to probably make something of himself. You know, he's also very tall. You know, Charlie's about 6'5", I believe. And again, he had a talent. I called him the greatest grifter I ever saw because he knew how to sell his organization very well. Now, it's possible he was a true believer. I give him that much. But what I also know is that he was also extremely naive, thinking that all of these benevolent contributors to his organization were doing it because it was all about his ability, or was it because they wanted him to serve a greater corporate purpose? Well, they did. And around the time that he decided that he was looking for a significant other and wanted to have a family, they decided to set him up. And they set him up. The type of woman that probably was, you know, not just the type of woman that he would want, but a lot of others would too. And in this case, Charlie clearly did not understand what he was involved in until he did. And once he understood it, he kind of understood what could happen. And that's what Candace has constantly been pointing out. She never loses sight of the fact that Charlie had mentioned time and again, yeah, there's a good chance that they're going to get rid of me. So when you wonder why, it seems like Erika Kirk is a very dishonest, non-believable performance artist. It's because she's intelligence. She's playing a part. She did her job, and now she's doing it on behalf of Israel and the State Department. The problem is that she's a shitty actress, and she's not very convincing. That doesn't mean that she's not in it for the long haul to play ball. And as you can see here, she's clearly in it to play ball.
If our grid goes down, you can't cook, you're not going to heat anything, you can't run any of your medical supplies, you can't talk on your phone, you can't take money out of a bank, and we turn into total chaos.
If this happens, the system stops.
If a transformer is taken down, we have to order it from Germany or China. It's going to take a year.
Up till recently, there were no comprehensive protective solutions available.
We know what the solutions are. They're not expensive. They're not difficult to employ. We just need the political will to do it and the follow-through on the part of the electric utilities to get it done.
The White House is protected from an EMP. The Congress and the CIA and the NSA, all of the areas that need to function in the government are protected. So why can't we be protected?
So as you can see, this is sort of the preempt stages many years ago of data centers and tracking everybody's information. We don't have enough intelligence, so we need more of it. And it's not like Erika is some brainiac who's, an electrical engineer, somebody who fully understands what's going on. She's just playing a role, which is why it's very easy to see why somebody gets themselves caught up in this world. They're just not going to ask questions. They're just going to go along because that's what you do. Again, she's playing a role.
Around some of these facilities, you don't have much more than a chain link fence to keep people out. Now that seems absurd to me.
I think it is absurd when we now know that attack on as few as 9 grid substations could bring down all 3 major interconnections for the United States grid.
If the power goes out, you get the generator, and if that goes out, you get another one. There's never been a plan for what happens after that.
The director of the National Security Agency, Admiral Rogers, came out and said it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Now, when you see images like this, and images of attacks, exploding devices, which I think is, yeah. What do you think this represents? Well, the one thing we have learned over the past 2 years plus, most things are false flags. In the end, it's all about how can I get my next government contract on as part of the military-industrial complex, as part of intelligence. Well, scare the shit out of people, convince them that they need more security, and they will give up more liberty. That's what's happening here. And in the case of Erika Kirk, like I said, just casually showing up in intelligence videos from over a decade ago, constantly dabbing her eyes with tons of gold on her hands. This is the real story here. Because no matter how hard they try to sell this idea that some random person showed up one day at a rally and just shot Charlie Kirk, rather than maybe they kind of had Charlie under their thumb forever, and the second he tried to break away, they decided, yeah, can't have that. Turning Point USA and what it does for congregating the masses, particularly the youth, to the polls. No, we can't have that. Why do you think AOC is getting propped up as hard as she is, and she's forming a political identity that jives with the corporate state on the Democratic side? Because the belief is AOC is going to be able to duplicate what Charlie Kirk was able to do for the GOP. Congregate the masses, particularly the youth. Maybe she'll have some luck. Who knows? But the second that you get out of line is the second that you can be removed. And the more our system shakes at its foundation and starts to fall apart, the more these stories will come about. That's why public executions, again, as we bring the conversation full circle for the evening, public executions like that of Renee Good will simply become more commonplace because people are just far too ready, willing, and able to accept them. The systemic takeover of the state. That's where we're headed. So does this surprise anybody? that she shows up in these videos for intelligence, for the CIA and the NSA? No. I know there are people who go, oh my God, I wouldn't expect anything less than this. And we are not going to stop talking about this. Because as I said, this is the key. There are millions of people out there who are convinced that something is really wrong with the state of Israel, and maybe, just maybe, even if it's only for the purpose of dismantling the Zionist state, that we lock arms with somebody like a Charlie Kirk. It's still important enough to put our differences aside and do it. And of course, there's always more layers to the story, and we will continue to address them going forward. But this video should leave no doubt at all as to who Erika Kirk is and what she represented and the role that she played. Just as Jen has pointed out, you know, kind of like Candace Owens going after the First Lady of France. Well, this is kind of the same situation here now, isn't it? I haven't seen any pictures of Erika pregnant. Not once. In fact, you would think some of that would probably come out just to kind of reassure the public that maybe this isn't just one big setup all along. But the more we see it, the more we're realizing, yeah, we've been put on forever. It's a scam. It's a setup. All of it. Now, whether or not we're living in a simulation, this much I do know. The government that is the United States would like us to believe that we are. Because in so many ways, it is. It is a simulation. Our lives may not be, but our lives within this country, they most certainly are. Until you actually see it for what it really is. When you get distracted by stories that have no implication whatsoever on the future of this country, don't waste time. And let me tell you, when you awake to the realities of what we're living through, it's actually scary, but it's actually very cathartic at the same time. Because in the future, you won't be fooled again. You'll understand what you're witnessing ahead of time. That's why when AOC makes her statement about the anti-Semitic protesting, you know that there's got to be more to it. So you don't just take it at face value. You dig in and unearth what is behind the curtain. Why is she doing that? What is she missing? It's the Zionist state. It's the State Department. And Erika Kirk is a part of it. And everything that Turning Point USA, just like every other organization that's out there that gets any type of traction, and this includes media figures. Do you think with the way that I talk and the way Jen talks on this channel, that we would ever be allowed to get to 5,000 or 10,000 live viewers at a time? I mean, I hope to be proven wrong, but I don't think I will be. Because I think most of you that watch this channel on a regular basis, the numbers that we get, this is from people who really want to see us, who don't just necessarily get caught up with the algorithm and say, oh, look at this channel, I'll check them out now. Because every once in a while it happens. And those that see it, the general reaction is, wow, this is great. I appreciate what you guys are saying. And that's far and few between. So we understand the risks involved with saying what we're saying. But I wouldn't do it any other way. Because at least I can live with myself knowing that no matter what happens, I did everything I could to try to help change this country for the better. And if each and every one of you are here trying to do the same, we appreciate you all. And that's why we do what we do. And that's why we're grateful to have this channel, regardless of how suppressed it may be. And for the final time this evening, if you are so inclined, please consider going over to patreon.com/revolutionary change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty and suppressed, still growing channel. And we obviously appreciate any and all contributors that have chipped in this evening. We have a few more super chats to get to before we go. So let's give another shout out to Brian Burns with the $2. They're right across from Quebecu Francophones. Not familiar, but I think I understand what you're saying. It's like a French phrase of some kind. If you explain it in the chat and put it up, that'd be fine. Constance Ange with the $2. Aaron Baker was expelled from Florida State Republican Party. I don't know if he was expelled from the Florida Republican Party. I know that there was an event that the Florida Republican Party chair was hosting in which they did not invite Aaron Baker. So they're protecting Randy Fine. That's for sure. To the extent I can't say. So I appreciate you sharing that, though. Thank you very much. David Hunter with the $5. Good to see you, sir. Check out Wegmans in New York City has begun collecting biometric data from anyone who enters its supermarkets, including facial mapping and voice recordings. Wegmans, which is a regional supermarket and is what I consider the rich person's version of Costco. This is or a poor example of Buc-ee's. Only I don't think Wegmans has the gas stations. But yes, duly noted, and I'm not surprised in the least. Gezin with the $4 super sticker. Appreciate you checking in. And with the $2, economy always starts revolutionary change. I agree. And we are in it right now for sure. Ronwell with the $2 again. Ben Shapiro fears Cynthia McKinney more than AOC. Probably. That's a fair assessment. I have no way to argue that point. I think that that's absolutely fair. And so with that said, we really do appreciate each and every one of you being here. Yeah, Randy Fine needs to do a lot of things, like fuck all the way off into hell and possibly into Israel. But there he could go, and Israel can fuck its way into hell as well. So yeah, hopefully that could happen. I'm holding out lots of hope. Not holding my breath, but we'll see what happens. So I like it. New Year's revolution. That seems to be the more effective way of putting it. With that being said, I would like to go watch a little bit of the Bears and the Pack playing football. And yes, Mehdi, he is a swine, a big, fat, ugly swine who's going to get his comeuppance at some point. So smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things that we ask you to do. We appreciate you all. We love you all. I'll see you Monday. And free Palestine. Good night, guys.